This is the order that you should be completing stuff in order of importance and what will get your grade up the most. So we just did binder checks. If for some reason you need to resubmit it, maybe you didn't have all your papers or you're absent, something like that, then you just have to tell me during class, as long as I'm not in the middle of teaching, my binder's ready, and I'll check the whole thing again, because I'm not keeping track of who missed what. I'll check the whole thing again, and I'll count all the papers again. In Schoology, I always put what the last day you can resubmit is, and it's usually about a month's worth of time. So it's really on you, like if you want to resubmit for more points, that you are vocalizing that to me and then doing it before that final date that I'll list in Schoology in the gradebook. Then you have your study guides, which are more important than other missing assignments right now and other corrections on prior quizzes. The study guides alone are worth way more points than a lot of your homeworks, like 150 points for those two. And then you can get an additional 100 extra credit points for that one, whatever you're scoring on it. So put the missing assignments to the side right now, focus on the study guides, especially because whatever you score on your Unit 2 Part 1 test, if it's higher than your quizzes, then I will match that score to those quizzes from this unit. So really pour all your energy into making sure you're understanding the study guides. I know you could probably just get the answers from a friend, but if you're not doing the work and understanding it yourself, I will notice that when I grade your test tomorrow, that something's not adding up because they're closely aligned. All right, so what questions do we have from either portion of the study guide still? Also, on a side note, when you check the slides, there will be lots of things in here for the learning targets in the slides. I really just looked at the test and pulled every skill that you need to know and kind of summarized it. So you do need to be able to solve systems by all three methods. Even though you might prefer one, you still need to be able to solve them by all three methods. To do word problems, interpret the answers to those word problems, list the steps, list the properties that justify those steps, and compare things like slope and y-intercept. So do look at the slides. I know I mostly post them for absent kids, but there's lots of information in there for you as well, too. All right, so what questions do we still have from either study guide? Uli?
The paper?
It can be either one. The paper one?
Yeah. I see.
All right, so the practice constructed response test. Friendly reminder, all the study guides are closely aligned to your test. So if you can do everything on the study guides, you should do pretty well on your tests. But he's just asking about part C. So I'll let you guys still have the experience of writing it and solving it by graphing. But when you solve by graphing, how do you know where your solution is on that graph? Where it intersects. So say, and I'm just making this up, this isn't the answer. But whatever XY coordinate it intersects at, say it's at, I don't know, 4, 5. Again, I don't know the answer off the top of my head. You only asked about part C. So what that would mean in the context of that situation is what it's asking. Earlier, you should have defined your variables. So like in part A, after you read the situation, and you could have used other variables, but you should have told me X is representing something. What did you guys say, or Uli, what did you say X is representing?
Well, I didn't put the X, I put H.
Okay.
Hats and
So hats, and not just like the number of hats, right? It should be the hat. Well, we know how many hats they bought. They bought 4 hats and 1 hat. So X is specifically representing the hat cost. And then Y or whatever other variable you use would represent what?
glove cost.
Okay, good. So don't forget when you guys do it tomorrow, That's an easy 5 points right there, is just defining the variables. All right, that also helps you with part C. Once you get your answer, whatever it is, I just made up an answer. That X would be the cost of your hats, like the actual price that they were. And then that Y would be the cost of your gloves. Sorry, it's lagging because of the internet, so waiting for it to catch up. But on your constructed response, you'd want to use complete sentences. So for C, you could say something to the effect of, hats cost $4, which I didn't actually solve it, so this is a sample answer. But if that's where they intersect on the graph, then I would say hats cost $4 and gloves cost $5. Assuming that's where they intersect, I don't know actually where they intersect. They just wanted help interpreting the answer. So you're relating it back to the real world. I saw some people put like one solution for that one. There is one solution, but you're supposed to interpret that solution. Okay, questions on this one? All right, questions on others? From either study guide. Jasleen? On this one? Okay, so the solving it by graphing, you have to be able to graph it by hand. I can tell if you are just trying to copy Desmos, because usually it won't line up. So first you would actually need your system. So you'd have to read this and figure out what your two equations are. Jasleen, what'd you say your equations are? And then the other one. Okay, does anyone disagree with that system? And then whatever variables you use, make sure you define them. So if we're doing it this way, then we're saying H is for hat, G is for gloves. But something like that. So here's my system. It does make sense. That is the right answer. If you don't know why, make sure you're asking. But now you're having to graph it. When you're graphing, pick one of them to be the X and the other one to be the Y. It really doesn't matter. They should still intersect at the same spot. But we'll just use H as the X and G as the Y. So all I did was replace the H's with X's, the G's with Y's. Then, am I able to graph them in the form that they are currently in? Yes, no. Am I able to graph them in the form that they are currently in? No. There is a way, but you'd have to do some algebra. Like you could find your X and Y intercepts from this, but you have to do some algebra. Personally, I think if you have to do some scratch work for it, then it would probably be better to put it in what form? Y equals mx plus b. Because what's really easy to see in y equals mx plus b?
Slope.
And good. And those are the two things that you need for graphing. So if you don't know that, maybe jot that down. Slope, y-intercept. Sorry, it's lagging. I have to stand back there so I can see my screen. But yeah. So if I can get it to that form, then I have the two things that I would need to graph it by hand. What is alone in slope intercept form? The Y. So if I can do that for each, then I can graph it and it'll be really easy. Let's start with this top one. If we're isolating the Y, always start with what's farther from the Y. Would that be the 2 or the 4x? And how do I cancel the 4x? And whatever you do on one side of the equal sign. Good. I get 2y equals, and are these like terms? 20 and 4x? So don't combine them. Don't make it like 16x or something. You just leave it like that. What I will do though is write the negative 4x first, just so that it looks more like mx plus b. That's just a preference. 4 is still negative, 20 is still positive. Now, y is still not alone. What's opposite of multiplying 2? And whatever you do on one side of the equal sign. And you remember to do it to both terms, right? Remember that warm up from a long time ago. You have to do it to both terms on the other side. Now, slope's allowed to be a fraction. In fact, it's usually easier if it's a fraction because rise over run. But you have to simplify it. So what's negative 4 over 2 simplified to? Negative 4 divided by 2. Negative 2. And now that's my slope. And then 20 divided by 2 is
10.
10. So now this is something that I can graph. So then on my coordinate plane, I'm going to go up to the 10, which is over here. This is where 10 is on my y-axis. Because you plot your y-intercepts first. Then you use your slope, your rise over run, to plot your next point. So what's my slope? Do we know how to identify what slope is?
Negative 2.
Negative 2 is my slope. So my rise is, if my slope is negative 2, my rise is,
10.
no, negative 2. So that means I'm going down 2 from my y-intercept. And then what's my run? It is not 10. So do I just go down 2 and that's it? Is my line going to look like this? So what's my run? 1. Because slope is rise over run. This isn't written as a fraction. To write as a fraction, I just put it over 1. So from my y-intercept, I'm going down 2 to the right 1, putting a dot there. Down 2 to the right 1. I'm going to do that probably multiple times because I don't know where it's going to intersect at until I graph my other line. But that's how I make my line. Questions on that? And you'll want to make it as straight as possible. So that's why you probably want to put a lot more dots. I'm going to use my line tool. That's pretty thick, but you want it on your paper as straight as possible so you can see where they intersect. We still need to rearrange the other one though. Do you think I could trust you guys to try that one on your own and then graph it and see if you get the right answer?
No.
I can't trust you to do that?
No, it's
Okay. Well, I'd like for you guys to try it. I don't want to just do all of it for you, but it's the same steps. Like get the y alone, subtract x on each side, then divide 4 from each term. Graph that using your y-intercept and your slope. We'll come back to this later, okay? But try that one yourself if you haven't already. Graph the other line and then see where they intersect. Any other questions from either study guide? Some of you are like way disengaged, but like, I don't want to hear your complaints about, oh, the test was so hard. My grade is so bad. I'm basically showing you what the test is and just changing the numbers. Uli?
Anybody got a question number 6?
Okay, puzzle piece study guide, question number 6. So for number 6, we want the solution. We want what x equals. In this one, we have to do what first? This is number 6 on your puzzle piece study guide. So free answers, but also free explanation because It's gonna be different numbers on your actual test. So when you see this, you should always do it first. What is it? Joshua? Sit up. Sit up. Class, when you see this in a problem, you should do it first. What can you do first?
Parentheses.
Yes, but what about them this time? Distribute. That's what you should do first if you see it in a problem. There are sometimes other ways to like still get the same answer, not distributing first, but really that's what you should do first. So I have a 3 outside parentheses here that I need to distribute. And then I will also have to distribute that 1/2 to the second set of parentheses. Sorry, I can't see when it lags, so I'm gonna have to be back here. So we have to distribute twice. What's 3 times x?
Factor X.
What's 3 times 2?
X.
And now I have to distribute over here, so what's 1/2 times 4?
4 1.
What'd you say?
Is it not 4 1/2 X?
No. What's half of 4? So it's gonna be 2x. Now, it could be a different fraction that's not as easy as 1/2 tomorrow. So highly recommend learn how to put fractions in your calculator. So like if this was me and I didn't know how to do that, I would put my fraction in parentheses, 1 division sign 2, and then I would times it by 4. And it would tell me that it's 2. Your calculator won't do operations like it won't times the x, but the numbers it can do. So use that. And then what's 1/2 times 6? 3. All of these happen to be positive. Make sure that you factor that in. If it's a negative, like make sure you times a negative by each. But all of these happen to be positive. Let me bring down the equals 34. So first we just distribute it. What do you usually have to do after you distribute? Good.
Good job.
Combine like terms. Do I have any like terms on the left side? What are they? So what's 3x plus 2x? And then we have another pair right here. The single numbers can always be combined. What's 6 plus 3?
9.
And then from here, hopefully that's a lot easier. It's a 2-stepper now. What do I have to do first? Get rid of the 5 or the 9?
5.
And how do I get rid of the 9?
Subtract 9.
Whatever you do on one side of the equal sign. And what property is that, by the way, when I subtract on each side?
Subtraction property.
Subtraction property of what? Equality. Reason I'm including that, even though it didn't ask, is because you'll see that tomorrow. So just preparing you as well. So it's 5x equal to what's 34 minus 9? Feel free to use a calculator. 34 minus 9. 25. Now we're down to 5x equals 25. What's opposite of timesing 5? Whatever you do on one side. And what property would that be? Okay, perfect. And then what is x equaling? 5. Because 25 divided by 5 is 5. Let me make sure that's what this is saying too. Otherwise, I need to change the key. And that is what it's saying. So questions on that one? Okay, let's go back to this one. Hopefully some people tried it. I don't want to take away from people that are actually doing what I'm telling them. So if I'm isolating y in this second equation, what do I need to get rid of first, the 4 or the x? Always start with what's farther from what you're trying to isolate. So what am I getting rid of first? Good. And how do I get rid of the x? Whatever you do on one side of the equal sign. I get 4y equals, and I'm just going to switch the order. These are not like terms, but I want it to look more like mx plus b. Turn around, look at the screen or look at your own screen. Now, opposite of multiplying by 4 is what? So that's what I'm gonna do, and you have to do it to both terms on the other side. Is slope allowed to be a fraction?
Yeah.
Yeah, so what's this fraction in front of the x right now? -1/4. Because the 1 isn't written, but it's implied if it's not. And then what's 12 divided by 4? 3. Now this, I'm also going to graph and then see where they intersect. So my y-intercept is 3. I have to plot that first. 1, 2, 3 would be right here. And then you use your slope to plot your next point. So what's my slope? So that means I'm going down 1 because my rise is negative. So down 1, and your run is always to the right. So down 1 to the right 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. It looks like they intersect right there. But really, you'd go down 1 to the right 4. Make your straight line. I'll use my line tool again, but usually when I'm taking a test, I'll just use another piece of paper. All right, and that's where they intersect at this coordinate, which what's that coordinate? What's the x of that? Not 2. So that would be the y of that. The x would be, I counted 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's my solution. Because that's where my 2 lines intersect. Could you check that graphically using Desmos? Yes, but I can tell when you don't know how to graph by hand, because then it doesn't actually line up. And I will be checking that on your constructed response. All right, we might have time for 1 or 2 more from either study guide. Remember, I don't have tutoring today, so this is like really your last chances. Ryan?
Question 2, when we're supposed to like graph the third trip to visit the mother.
Okay, that's a good question. So this situation would probably be best if you made an equation for it. I know it's not asking for the equation, but that'll help you graph it when you have something in what form? Okay, good. So usually what gets replaced with numbers is your slope and your y-intercept. What's another name for slope? I mentioned it during stride. I don't think I really mentioned it outside of that. Maybe you saw it on your review. But what's another name for slope? Rate of change. So if you read the little blurb right here, what it's changing by each time is your slope. So what is it changing by each time? 60 miles per hour. She's driving at an average speed of 60 miles per hour. So that's going to be my slope. Y equals 60x. And y-intercept is always like your starting point. So know that we're going to be graphing her total number of miles for the rest of her trip. Does she have like a starting amount of miles? So then that's going to be my y-intercept. And now when you're graphing it, usually when you graph, you start at your y-intercept. So I'm going to put a dot at the 180. So I'm going to drag this to 180. And if you can, I don't know how to describe it, but like you can feel like when you go up, it's counting by 20s. Because it goes up 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. Make sense? I want it to be at the 180. Right there. Then it's changing by 60 each time. It's going up by 60 each time. What's 180 plus 60? 240. So then I'm dragging this one to be where the 240 is. So 2040 would be there. What's 240 plus 60? So then this should be where the 300 is. I should be getting a straight line because that's what this whole unit is about, straight lines. What's 300 plus another 60? So then we're going up 20, 40, 60. What's 360 plus 60? So then up above the 400, we're going up 20. What's 420 plus 60? So then going up here. 480 plus 60. And then lastly, 540 plus 60.
540 plus 60, 600.
And then I should be getting a straight line. If it's not a straight line, then maybe you're adding wrong. But making the equation is super helpful for that.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, I sense that you're done. So if you have any additional questions, make sure you email me, make sure you watch the videos, make sure you check the constructed response key. It'll be posted later. All of this will be posted later. Tomorrow's the test.